I grew up at a farm with my oldest sister, mum, and stepdad, who was in the SAS. Our middle sister used to visit, and our sibling wars were 100% a thing. Well, one lovely weekend, we were messing around in the shed, and the middle sister, let's call her Sheila, because that's her bloody name, found the old dud grenade that the old fella had brought back one day from some mission. It said his name on the side of it. Anywho, here she is playing with it, and I said helpfully, "Oh, the pin on the top. You pull that out." I knew it was a dud. Our other sister knew it was a dud. But Sheila, well, she pulled the pin, and me and Sherry looked at each other and shouted, "Run for your life!" and proceeded to bolt out of the shed. Now, not poor Sheila, she was standing there holding what she thought was a live grenade. If I was a decent person, I'd feel sorry for her. But anywho, I'm not. She dropped it and ran out screaming and crying, only to find us outside in tears of laughter. Now, as it turns out, Dad, Mum and Sheila did not find this funny for some reason. To this day, I can picture the utter fear on her face, and it brings a loving, brotherly smile to my face.
Tom from Scotland. My big brother used to like to shoot me with his gat gun. It fired small ball bearings. It didn't hurt, and we had a lot of fun doing it. One day, he got a new, very powerful air pistol. He told me to stand just an extra 2 steps further away than normal, as this was a slightly more powerful gun. He also didn't tell me that he was going to fire one of those little darts with the feathers in the back of it.
What are you, Ace Ventura?
So 5 minutes later, I was bent over the kitchen table with my pants around my ankles while my mum tried to retrieve the dart that was buried in my arse cheek with a pair of tweezers.
Oh, my gosh. Mothers of boys, eh?
Trevor Bell, my 2 older sisters locked me in a cockatoo cage when I was about 3.
This from Joe. My sister took my front teeth out with a frying pan just after I started school at the age of 5. What a great sister. John Janowski says, a fun game we used to play when we were about 8 or 9 was Guess the Room. Back then in the 80s, the suitcases were pretty solid devices with locks on them you could only open from the outside. Do you know what was fun? To put my little brother in one, 6 at the time, inside and disorientate him by dragging him around and spinning him in the sealed suitcase. The goal was to guess where in the house you had been deposited. It was hours of fun until I realised my little brother could guess so much better than me. Well, this didn't play out well with my older brother's ego. I'm a problem solver at heart. So I decided to give my 6-year-old brother a conundrum to solve. I spun him around, I dragged him all over the house and asked him where he thought he was. Little shit guessed correctly again. Top of the stairs, eh? Yes. Well, not for long. And then one swift kick and faster than any toboggan ride I've ever seen. The suitcase and unsuspecting passenger gathered at surprising speed down the 24 stairs and smashed into the wall with enough force to awaken not only my parents but the neighbours too. This led to a courteous call from the local police department and my liberty being removed for a long time. But to be honest, I'd probably do it all again.
My older brother once took a piss in my water bottle while I was asleep. I woke up not knowing it was in there and took a hearty draft and was promptly sick. And then, even more promptly, went to his room and poured the rest on him in the middle of the night and then kicked the living shit out of him as he lay there cocooned in his duvet. Worse still, to drain my water bottle, he poured it on my cactuses and drowned them all. This was 28 years ago and I still haven't forgotten him for the cactus. So he had a collection of cacti and he drowned them by tipping the water out so he could piss in his drink bottle.
What an absolute munter. I sprayed deodorant up my younger sister's nose one morning because she wouldn't wake up and get ready for school. Guess what, guys? It works.
I had a sudden impulse to get out of bed.
Fed my younger brother mothballs when we were little. They were just in this little plastic holder that hung inside the wardrobe and looked exactly like lifesaver lollies. Took a little bit of convincing, but he stuck one in his mouth and started foaming. Just as Mum walked in to see him being basically poisoned. Tell you what, he ended up with a belt around the arse with that one.
When I was about 7, my brother, who was 11, was into making homemade bow and arrows. Here we go. Practicing with some arrows that had finally pointed, he wanted a smaller target to challenge these skills. And that's where I came of use. My brother eagerly begged me to play a little bit of Robin Hood. I was excited that he asked and couldn't refuse. He told me to stand in front of our big oak tree, which he then tied me to with some rope. He said to stay very, very still as he balanced an apple on my head.
No.
And if I moved, I would ruin the game. Well, with a few leaps backwards, my arsehole of a brother raised his bow and arrow, aiming it at me, and again told me not to move. He pulled back and let the arrow fly across the air, straight into the corner of my eye.
Oh, shit. I didn't see that coming. I thought he was going to get the apple. I was gullible like
There
the
was
brother.
no chance of him getting
Into
the apple.
Eye.
Panic set in and he begged me not to tell on him, but it was a little bit obvious because I had an arrow sticking out of my head. He couldn't get the rope undone quick enough before my mum came out of the house to my screaming and eventually beat him senseless once I was back from hospital. Luckily enough, there was no major damage and thankfully I only had a couple of stitches. Why have enemies when you have family?